Queen Boudica. A name whispered through the ruins of ancient Britain, carried by legends, and stitched into the fabric of rebellion itself. She was a mother, a queen, a warrior, and finally, a ghost, a figure swallowed by history, leaving behind one of the greatest disappearances ever recorded. Her story begins long before she ever lifted a sword, long before flames swallowed Roman cities, and long before her name became a threat so dangerous that an entire empire tried to erase it. Boudica was born into the Iceni tribe, a Celtic people who lived in what is now eastern England. These tribes lived free, worshipping their gods beneath open skies, following ancient traditions passed down for generations. But everything changed when Rome arrived. The Romans didn't simply conquer, they absorbed. They crushed cultures, bent rulers to their will, and demanded obedience from those who once answered to no one. Yet even under Rome's shadow, the Iceni held on to a fragile independence through their king, Prasutagus, Boudica's husband. He believed he could negotiate with Rome, coexist with the empire while preserving his people's freedom. But Rome never truly shared power. When Prasutagus died, his kingdom became a target. The Romans rejected his will, which granted joint rule to Boudica and her daughters. They saw no reason to honor a dead Celtic king's wishes. So they stepped in, not with diplomacy but with brutality. Soldiers stormed through Iceni lands. They seized property, stripped nobles of their status, and dragged Boudica into the open. There, the queen of the Iceni was publicly whipped, flogged like a criminal. And even worse, her daughters, barely young women, were violated by Roman soldiers. This was meant to break her, to humiliate her, to warn everyone what happens when a tribal leader dares challenge Rome. But what Rome did not understand is that they had just created the most dangerous enemy imaginable. Pain did not silence Boudica, it forged her. Her humiliation became her armor. Her daughter's screams became her war cry. Rome had not punished a powerless queen. Rome had awakened a force that would shake the empire to its core. With fire still on her back and blood still in her heart, Boudica rose before the tribes. She called out to the Iceni, the Trinovants, and every Celtic clan living under Roman oppression. For years they had murmured their hatred quietly. Now, for the first time, those murmurs became a single voice, a voice led by a woman who had nothing left to lose. Under her command, the tribes united into an army larger than anything Britain had ever seen. Some accounts say more than 100,000 warriors answered her call. They weren't fighting for land or glory or gold. They were fighting for revenge. As Boudica stood before this vast sea of warriors, she was no longer simply a queen. She became a symbol of resistance, of fury, of a nation pushed to the edge. Her chariot rolled through the ranks, her daughters beside her, the same daughters Rome had tried to break. And she swore to her people, "We will either win, or we will die with honor." Her first target was Londinium, the Roman capital in Britain. A symbol of Roman power, arrogance, and dominance. Boudica's army descended on the city like a storm. The Romans were unprepared. They did not expect the tribes to unite, let alone attack with such ferocity. The city fell quickly, and with it, Rome's illusion of control. Boudica ordered no mercy. The citizens who mocked her people were slaughtered. Their temples were destroyed. Roman survivors fled in terror. And word spread, the queen was coming. Next came the 9th Legion. One of Rome's most feared military units, experienced, disciplined, deadly. But even they could not stand against Boudica's numbers. Her warriors tore through them, annihilating most of the legion. For the first time in decades, Rome had suffered a humiliating defeat that rippled all the way back to the empire's heart. Then came Londinium, modern-day London. The governor, Paulinus, knew he couldn't defend it. He abandoned the city. The people left behind were not so lucky. Boudica's army marched in, torches blazing. What followed was destruction so complete that Roman historians later tried to soften the truth. But the archaeological record tells the real story, a thick layer of burned earth beneath modern London, a scar left behind by Boudica's wrath. The city burned. Its population was slaughtered. Boudica's rebellion wasn't just a military campaign, it was vengeance delivered in fire. By now, Rome understood the scale of the crisis. Boudica wasn't a rebel, They had created a monster of their own making. Nero himself considered withdrawing entirely from Britain. That's how dangerous she had become. But Governor Paulinus returned with a plan. He knew Boudica's strengths, but he also knew her weaknesses. Her army was massive but poorly armored. They fought with passion, but passion cannot stop Roman formations. So Paulinus chose the battlefield, a narrow valley with forests on both sides. Boudica's large army would be trapped. Their numbers would mean nothing. When the two forces finally met, Boudica rode forward on her chariot. Her daughters stood with her. Her warriors roared with the confidence of a force that had crushed city after city. But Paulinus had positioned his men with precision. Roman shields locked together. Spears braced. Archers ready. And when the charge began, the traps snapped shut. The front lines of Boudica's army were cut down quickly. Bodies fell and piled up. The warriors behind them were pushed forward by the weight of tens of thousands more. They could not retreat. Their families and wagons were parked behind them, blocking escape. Panic spread through the ranks. The battlefield became a killing ground. When the fighting ended, tens of thousands of Britons lay dead. Rome had won. But here is where the mystery begins. Because despite the Romans' obsession with recording every victory, every notable death, every fallen enemy leader, there is no record of Boudica's body. No confirmation of her death. No details of her final moments. Rome, so meticulous, so eager to claim triumph over its enemies, simply says nothing. One Roman historian wrote that she took poison. Another claimed she died of illness. But both accounts were written years later with no eyewitnesses. So the truth remains out of reach. And the people who knew her best, her own tribe, left no written record at all. That silence is the heart of the mystery. Some stories suggest her people carried her body away before the Romans could find it, protecting their queen even in death. Others believe she was cremated in a sacred ceremony deep in the forests, her ashes hidden so Rome could never claim her. Some legends whisper she fled north with a handful of loyal warriors, vanishing into the wild lands of ancient Britain, living out her last days far from Roman reach. The mystery only grew deeper in modern times. In 2006, archaeologists discovered a strange grave near the river Tees. Inside was the skeleton of a tall female warrior, with injuries consistent with battle. She had been buried with honor, surrounded by weapons and precious items. But DNA tests were inconclusive. If it was Boudica, then she survived the final battle, escaped Roman capture, and died far from the battlefield history assigned to her. And if it wasn't her, then the question remains, where is the queen who changed Britain forever? The Romans had every reason to hide her fate. If they killed her, they would have celebrated it in their records. If she escaped, they would have suppressed it. If her people protected her body, Rome would have seen it as a final act of defiance. Silence, in this case, was more useful to the empire than truth. So Boudica became something else. Not a corpse on a battlefield, not a trophy of Rome, but a legend, one they could never fully erase. To some, she is buried under a London train station. To others, beneath an ancient mound in Norfolk. Some believe her grave lies under a quiet field, unmarked, waiting for the day someone uncovers the truth. And some believe she never died at all, that she simply slipped into the world of myth, a queen returning to her gods. What we know for certain is this: Rome wanted her forgotten. But history refused to obey. The warrior queen still stands as a reminder that an empire, no matter how powerful, can be shaken by a single person who refuses to bow. Her disappearance, whether escape, death, or deliberate concealment, made her immortal in a way Rome could never understand. And so we are left with the final question: what truly happened to Queen Boudica? Was she killed? Did she take her own life? Did her warriors protect her body from Roman hands? Or is she still hidden somewhere beneath the soil of Britain, waiting for someone to find her? Until her grave is discovered, one truth remains: she is the queen who fought an empire, and then vanished from history as if her entire life was a whisper carried by the wind, leaving behind a legend that refuses to die.